"No man dare do this to me," said the dirty giant. Then all the warriors arrived at the wedding. "No man dare do this to me," said the dirty giant. Then all the warriors arrived at the wedding. The small village lay in the shadow of tall, green hills where the air was always fresh, and the sound of birds filled the mornings. People lived simple lives there, growing crops, tending animals, and helping one another. Everyone knew each other, and the village had its share of stories, some of happy times, others of strange happenings in the nearby forests. But no story was as strange or frightening as the one about the man they called the Dirty Giant. The Dirty Giant was a figure of mystery and fear. No one knew his real name, and he had never joined the village for any festival or market day. His clothes were torn and covered with mud, and his hair was wild and tangled, like the branches of the forest he lived in. He had a large, heavy frame that made him seem taller and stronger than any man the villagers had ever seen. Children would whisper about him when they passed the edge of the forest, hiding behind their mothers, while elders would shake their heads and warn the curious not to go near him. For years, the villagers avoided the forest altogether. They told stories of people who had tried to meet the giant and had never returned, although whether these stories were true or just rumors no one could say. Still, the fear lingered. People did not know what he wanted, what he could do, or whether he was kind or cruel. The giant lived on the outskirts of the forest, near a river that ran swiftly over smooth stones, and he seemed to have no home other than the trees and rocks around him. One bright morning, as the village prepared for a special celebration, the silence of the usual forest rumors was broken. Children ran past the market square, giggling and pointing toward the road, where an enormous figure was moving slowly toward the village. At first, people thought it was a joke, perhaps someone wearing layers of old clothes to scare them. But as he drew nearer, it became clear that this was no trick. The man was huge, with broad shoulders and long, strong arms. His clothes were torn in many places, and his feet left deep impressions in the dirt road with every step. The villagers stopped what they were doing. Farmers left their tools in the fields, shopkeepers abandoned their counters, and even the children fell silent, holding their parents' hands tightly. The giant walked with a strange determination, his eyes scanning the village as if he had come with a purpose that could not wait. Rumors spread instantly. "It is him, the Dirty Giant. What does he want now? Is it safe?" Voices were low, filled with fear and curiosity. At the center of the village, preparations were underway for a wedding. Layla, a brave and kind-hearted young woman, was getting ready to marry Amir, her childhood friend. The villagers had decorated the square with colorful cloth, flowers, and lights. The smell of sweet pastries and spices floated through the air. Everyone was busy, but the sight of the approaching giant made them pause. They wondered if this celebration, so carefully prepared, could continue in peace. The giant reached the center of the village square and stopped. He looked around at the crowd that had formed. There was an unusual mix of fear and curiosity in their eyes. He did not raise his hand to threaten anyone. Instead, he spoke in a voice that was deep, rough, and loud enough for all to hear. "I have come with a message for the woman who will marry today," he said. The villagers exchanged worried glances. Some stepped back, ready to run if he made a sudden move, but no one dared step forward. Layla, noticing the fear in everyone, felt a strange pull of courage. She did not understand why, but something about the giant's eyes, large, dark, and strangely serious, made her feel that he was not there to harm them. She stepped forward, brushing past whispers and warnings. "Who are you and what do you want?" she asked, her voice steady, though her heart raced. The giant looked at her for a moment. There was a pause that seemed to stretch long enough for everyone to hold their breath. Then he spoke again, more gently this time, as if choosing his words carefully. "I have come to warn you and to help," he said. "There is a danger that no one has dared face before. It involves what is most precious to you and your family. I cannot leave until I speak to you." The villagers murmured among themselves. Some wanted to drive him away, others, like Layla, wanted to listen. The giant's presence was intimidating, yes, but there was also honesty in his words. He did not threaten, he did not demand, and he did not boast. He only spoke of something important that could not wait. Layla walked closer to him, noticing his rough hands and the dirt caked under his fingernails, signs of a life lived far from comfort. She noticed, too, that there was no anger in his face, only determination and perhaps exhaustion from his long journey. "What danger do you speak of?" she asked, curious and cautious. The giant took a deep breath and explained that long ago, a valuable item, a golden crown that had been in her family for generations, had been stolen by a group of dangerous men. Over the years, it had changed hands many times and had caused harm to those who tried to recover it. The giant, who had faced many challenges alone in the forest, had finally found the crown. But bringing it back safely to the village and the bride was not something he could do without help. "No man dared do this before me," he said, his voice tinged with pride and weariness. "They were afraid of what might happen if they confronted the thieves. I faced them alone, and now I need your courage to finish what must be done." The villagers listened in stunned silence. A mix of admiration and fear filled the square. Layla could see that the giant's words were true. He had risked everything, alone, and now sought to protect the happiness of her wedding. She felt a new sense of respect for him, realizing that courage came in many forms. The people who had once feared him now had to reconsider their opinions. For a moment, the village seemed suspended in time. The bright sun illuminated the square, the flowers and decorations swaying gently in the wind, and the giant stood tall, quiet, but commanding attention. Children peeked from behind their parents, and elders whispered that perhaps they had misjudged him all these years. Layla took a step closer and spoke with conviction. "I will listen, and I will help if I can. You have done something brave already, and no one should face danger alone." The giant nodded, a faint smile breaking through his rugged face. For the first time, he seemed not just a figure of fear but a protector, a man whose actions spoke louder than appearances. The villagers began to realize that this unexpected visitor was part of a story that would be remembered for years to come. A story about bravery, honesty, and the courage to do what others could not. As the day continued, the village slowly returned to its wedding preparations, but with a new energy. People spoke in hushed tones about the giant, and children, though still curious, no longer felt the same fear. Layla stayed near the giant, learning more about what had happened, while the rest of the village watched from a distance, unsure of how events would unfold but aware that something remarkable had begun. By evening, as the sky turned shades of orange and pink, the giant sat quietly near the edge of the square. He had made his presence known, and the villagers had begun to see him not just as a monster of the forest, but as someone who could change the course of their lives for the better. The story of the dirty giant was no longer just a tale of fear. It was a story about courage, sacrifice, and the unexpected ways heroes appear in our lives. That day, no one forgot the first meeting between Layla and the giant. The wedding had yet to occur, but the arrival of the giant had already changed the village forever. People spoke of him for months afterward, telling their children and grandchildren about the man who had come forward when no one else dared. And though the giant remained silent for much of the day, his actions spoke louder than words. He had begun a journey that would test courage, friendship, and the strength of the human heart. The giant's eyes, dark and steady, met Layla's as he began to speak. The crowd around them remained silent, though their curiosity was almost unbearable. Villagers whispered among themselves, glancing nervously at the figure who had once inspired fear, now standing with a strange sense of purpose. Layla took a deep breath and focused on his words, determined to understand the reason for his sudden appearance. He explained that many years ago, the village had possessed a precious treasure, a golden crown, delicately engraved and sparkling even after centuries. It was meant for the family of the bride, passed down through generations as a symbol of honor and pride. But long ago, it had been stolen by a group of men who were ruthless and cunning. These men were known in distant villages for their cruelty and their skill in avoiding capture. No one had dared challenge them, and the crown had vanished without a trace. The giant's voice trembled slightly, not with fear, but with the memory of the danger he had faced. "I have tracked these men for many months," he said. "I have crossed forests, climbed cliffs, and faced rivers that no ordinary man could cross. I found the crown, but retrieving it has not been simple. These men are dangerous, and no one in the village dared confront them." The villagers listened in stunned silence. Some gasped quietly, imagining the hardships the giant must have faced. Others looked skeptical, unable to believe that one man alone could take on such a dangerous task. Yet there was something in the giant's voice that made it impossible to doubt his sincerity. Layla felt a chill run down her spine, not from fear, but from the realization that this man had risked his life to protect something precious to her family. The giant continued, explaining how he had finally recovered the crown. He had encountered traps set by the thieves, hidden paths meant to confuse and delay him, and even false rumors that tried to mislead him. At times he had almost given up, but he knew that the wedding, the honor of the family, and the happiness of Layla depended on his success. He had faced challenges that no one else would dare, relying on his courage, his strength, and his determination. "Many have tried before me," he said, his voice deepening with emphasis, "but all failed. No man dared do this before. I was warned of the dangers, of the threats, and of the punishments these men would bring. Still, I could not turn away. This crown must return to its rightful place. You must understand, young woman, that what I carry is not only a treasure but also a responsibility." Layla's heart pounded. She had never imagined that the crown she had seen in family stories could involve such danger. She looked around at the villagers, many of whom were still cautious and wary. She could see fear in their eyes, but also a growing curiosity. The giant, once a figure of terror, was slowly transforming in their minds. He was no longer simply the dirty giant. He was someone brave, selfless, and honorable. "I want to help," Layla said, her voice steady despite the tension in the square. "You have done so much already. But if there is more danger ahead, we must not face it alone." Her words surprised even herself. She had always been careful to follow rules, careful to avoid trouble, yet here she was, offering to stand beside a man most of the village had feared for years. The giant studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I need your courage and the courage of those who will stand with you. The men who stole this crown will not give it up easily. They have no respect for fear, and they have little regard for life. They will attempt to reclaim it, but if we work together, there is a chance we can stop them and ensure the crown reaches you safely." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some villagers shook their heads, frightened at the thought of confronting thieves so dangerous. Others whispered to each other, imagining the pride they could feel if the treasure returned safely. Layla, however, remained focused. She realized that the giant's bravery had opened a door for the entire village. If he could face danger alone, surely they could find a way to protect themselves and their families with careful planning. The giant then shared more details. He explained that the thieves were not ordinary men. They had followers, allies who guarded the routes and traps that could easily catch the unprepared. "I have faced them," he said, "but I cannot predict everything. The path to safety requires more than strength. It requires planning, courage, and unity. You must choose who will stand with you, for only together can we succeed." As the villagers absorbed his words, Layla thought carefully. She remembered the stories her grandfather had told her about the village's warriors, men and women who had once defended their home from danger. Though the village was peaceful now, she knew that these people still lived nearby, skilled and honorable, ready to answer a call for justice. She began to consider who could help them, who could bring strength to their side, and how they could prepare for what lay ahead. Meanwhile, the giant explained why he had come specifically on the day of the wedding. "The crown must be returned before the ceremony," he said, "so that no one can claim it or use it for harm during your celebration. The timing is critical, and that is why I have come now. The wedding is a symbol of unity and joy, and it must not be tarnished by fear or theft." Layla felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. She understood the importance of the giant's message, but she also realized that the task ahead would not be simple. Still, she could not ignore the determination in his eyes or the seriousness of his words. There was something noble in the way he spoke, something that demanded respect. The villagers, sensing the trust Layla placed in him, began to soften their fear. Some even nodded quietly, willing to consider helping in small ways. For the next several hours, Layla and the giant spoke in hushed tones, planning the next steps. He described the forest paths, the traps, and the locations where the thieves might attempt to hide or reclaim the crown. Layla listened intently, taking mental notes and asking questions. Each answer the giant gave revealed more of his intelligence and resourcefulness. He was not merely a brute force. He had strategy, foresight, and a careful mind shaped by months of effort and danger. As the sun began to lower in the sky, painting the village in shades of gold and orange, Layla realized that the day had changed everything. The giant, once a figure of fear, had become a teacher and guide. The villagers, who had trembled at his approach, were slowly beginning to see the potential for bravery within themselves. And Layla, standing at the center of it all, understood that her role in the coming days would be as important as anyone's. The giant looked at the villagers one last time before the evening. "Prepare yourselves," he said quietly. "The next days will require courage. But remember this, strength alone will not win the day. Wisdom, unity, and courage together will ensure that the treasure returns safely." The villagers nodded, their fear giving way to a mixture of excitement and determination. They had never expected the wedding to become such a moment of adventure and bravery. Layla, too, felt a surge of confidence. She knew that the giant's presence had shifted everything. No longer was this merely a day of celebration. It was a day that would test courage, inspire unity, and leave stories that would be told for generations. That night, as preparations continued for the wedding, Layla stayed near the giant, learning more about the path ahead. The villagers returned to their homes, sharing whispers of the man who had faced danger alone and brought hope to their village. Children drifted to sleep imagining the bravery of a figure they had once feared. The elders nodded quietly, recognizing the rare courage in someone who had risked everything for the good of others. By the time the stars filled the sky, it was clear that the village would never see the dirty giant in the same way again. He was no longer simply a man of fear. He was a man of courage, determination, and honor. And Layla, feeling the weight of responsibility and the excitement of what was to come, knew that the story was just beginning. The giant, quiet and still, seemed to watch over the village as if guarding it even in silence. The crown, now safe with him, awaited the next phase of its journey. And as the moon rose high above the hills, the village slept with a mixture of wonder, hope, and anticipation, unaware that the next days would bring warriors, confrontations, and a test of courage, unlike any they had ever faced before. The morning after the giant's revelation, the village was unusually alive with excitement and quiet concern. Word of the dirty giant's bravery had spread like wildfire through the small community. People moved with a sense of purpose, though many still cast wary glances toward the edge of the forest, where he waited silently. Layla, now fully aware of the gravity of the situation, knew that while the giant had done something remarkable, he could not face the danger alone. The stolen crown, though recovered, was still at risk, and the thieves who had taken it were known for their cunning and strength. Layla's fiancé, Amir, understood this more than anyone. He had grown up in the village, trained by elders who had once been warriors themselves, and he knew that strategy, not just courage, would be needed to protect the wedding and the treasure. Without hesitation, he sent messengers to the neighboring villages, seeking men who were known for their skill, bravery, and honesty. The call was simple: help protect the crown, the bride, and the village, and honor would be returned to all who joined. The first messengers left before sunrise. They rode quickly on horses, carrying letters that described the situation in careful words. They spoke of a giant who had risked everything alone and a young bride whose wedding might be threatened. They emphasized that this was no ordinary request. Only the most courageous and capable should answer. As the messengers disappeared down winding paths, Layla and the giant began preparing. Though she had no combat skills, Layla knew her role would be crucial. She could provide guidance, encouragement, and coordination, ensuring that those who arrived were organized and ready for what lay ahead. By midday, the first of the warriors arrived. They were not strangers to hardship. Each had stories of battles fought for villages, families, or justice. One by one, they entered the square, looking up at the giant with cautious respect. They had heard the rumors, of course, but seeing him in person changed their perspective. He was massive, yes, and his presence was imposing, but there was also a sense of calm and determination about him. It was clear that this was a man who had survived danger alone, and that commanded respect from even the most experienced warriors. The villagers watched as the warriors approached. Some held their children closer, others whispered excitedly to their neighbors. This was not just a wedding anymore. It was becoming a gathering of courage and unity. The giant stepped forward, explaining the situation once more to the assembled warriors. He spoke of the crown, the thieves, and the traps along the path. He emphasized that while strength was valuable, strategy and cooperation would be what ensured success. Each warrior listened attentively, nodding in agreement. One, an older man named Farid, had once led defenses for distant villages and understood the importance of coordination. Another, a young woman named Sana, had trained in agility and tracking, skills that would be essential for spotting hidden dangers. Others brought experience in archery, climbing, and strategy. Together, they formed a small but capable team, each person contributing a unique skill that would be vital in the days to come. Layla observed the warriors carefully, realizing that trust would be as important as bravery. The giant, despite his size and strength, could not command them by force. He needed them to choose to follow him willingly, and they did. There was a silent understanding among them. They were part of something larger than themselves, a mission to protect the innocent and restore honor. Layla felt a swell of pride and relief, knowing that the giant would no longer face this challenge alone. As the afternoon passed, the warriors began to familiarize themselves with the village and the surrounding forest. The giant led them to the edge of the trees, showing hidden paths, warning of natural traps like uneven ground and loose rocks, and describing the locations where thieves might attempt ambushes. Layla took careful notes, learning how to direct villagers and ensure that everyone stayed safe while the warriors prepared. Her mind worked quickly, balancing the roles of coordinator, planner, and observer. The villagers, inspired by the presence of the warriors and the giant, started helping in small but meaningful ways. They cleared obstacles, gathered supplies, and prepared food for the team. Women and men alike offered tools, ropes, and protective coverings, while children ran errands, carrying messages and supplies between the village and the warriors. Even those who had once feared the giant now worked alongside him, understanding that courage and unity could transform fear into action. By evening, the square was filled with activity. The sun set behind the hills, casting long shadows that seemed to mingle with the excitement and tension in the air. Fires were lit to prepare meals, and tents were set up for the warriors who would stay overnight. The giant, calm yet watchful, moved among them, offering advice and encouragement. He spoke quietly to Layla, explaining how the thieves were clever and how the upcoming days would require patience and vigilance. "Courage is not just about fighting," he said. "It is about knowing when to act and when to wait. We must be ready for both." Layla nodded, understanding the wisdom in his words. She watched as the warriors practiced maneuvers, studied the terrain, and planned for potential scenarios. Even the youngest warriors, eager but inexperienced, were guided carefully, learning from those who had faced danger before. The giant's experience became a source of inspiration, showing that even a single person's bravery could ripple out and inspire many. That night the village settled under a sky filled with stars. The giant sat near the edge of the forest, looking out at the hills that had sheltered the thieves for so long. Layla approached him, carrying a lantern to light his way. She asked questions about the crown, the thieves, and the path ahead, and he answered patiently, sharing details that would help her coordinate the villagers and support the warriors. Sleep came slowly for many. Some lay awake, imagining the challenges ahead, while others dreamed of bravery and honor. The giant, despite his size and strength, also rested cautiously, knowing that the next day would demand focus and courage. Layla, though tired, felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. She realized that her role was not just to witness bravery, but to be part of it, to help shape the outcome through careful thought and leadership. The next morning, the village awoke to a sense of purpose and energy. More warriors arrived from neighboring villages, each bringing skills, experience, and determination. With each arrival, the sense of unity grew stronger. The village square became a hub of planning and preparation, with the giant at its center. Layla moved among the people, coordinating tasks, distributing supplies, and ensuring that everyone understood their role. The atmosphere was tense but also filled with hope that together they could protect the crown, ensure the safety of the wedding, and honor the bravery of those who had come before. By mid-morning, the team was ready. The giant addressed the assembled warriors and villagers, his voice calm but commanding attention. He reminded them that the thieves were clever, that the path ahead would test their patience, strength, and unity. He spoke of courage, responsibility, and the importance of protecting those who could not defend themselves. Each word resonated with the group, reinforcing their commitment to the task. Layla stood beside him, feeling the weight of responsibility but also the pride of leadership. She knew that the coming days would not be easy, but with the giant and the warriors united, they had a chance to succeed. The village, once quiet and fearful, was now alive with purpose, energy, and determination. Everyone understood that this was more than a wedding or a stolen crown. It was a moment that would define their community, their courage, and their sense of unity. As the sun reached its highest point, the giant and the warriors prepared to move toward the forest, ready to confront the unknown challenges that awaited them. Villagers lined the edges of the square, offering words of encouragement, blessings, and prayers for success. Layla watched them leave, her heart full of hope and determination, knowing that the story unfolding before her eyes would be remembered for generations. The arrival of the warriors had transformed the village. Fear had been replaced with courage, doubt with determination, and suspicion with trust. The dirty giant, once a figure of fear, had become a symbol of bravery and leadership. And as they moved toward the forest, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, the villagers knew that together, they could overcome even the most daunting obstacles. The morning air in the village was crisp and clear, but tension hung over the square like a quiet storm. The giant and the assembled warriors, fully prepared, moved silently toward the forest edge. Villagers had gathered to watch from a safe distance, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and hope. This was the moment that would determine whether the golden crown would return safely, and whether the wedding could take place without incident. The thieves, cunning and unpredictable, were known for setting traps and ambushes, and everyone understood that even a single misstep could have dangerous consequences. As they entered the forest, the giant led the way. His enormous frame moved carefully through the uneven terrain, his eyes scanning every shadow, every rustle of leaves. The warriors followed closely, each relying on their unique skills. Farid, the elder warrior, walked with measured steps, keeping an eye on potential traps. Sana, the young tracker, moved lightly, her sharp eyes and ears picking up the faintest signs of the thieves' presence. Others carried ropes, tools, and protective gear, ready to respond to any challenge. The giant spoke quietly as they advanced, explaining the routes the thieves were likely to take. "They know these woods better than anyone," he said. "We cannot rely solely on strength. We must anticipate their moves, stay alert, and protect one another. If we act as one, we can succeed." His voice, calm but firm, inspired confidence. The warriors nodded in agreement, each understanding the seriousness of the situation. Hours passed as they moved deeper into the forest. The light filtered through the trees, creating shifting patterns on the ground. Birds sang occasionally, and the wind rustled the leaves, but beneath the beauty of nature, tension crackled like electricity. The thieves had not yet appeared, but signs of their presence were evident. Broken branches, footprints, and cleverly hidden traps hinted at their cunning and readiness. The giant and the warriors carefully navigated these obstacles, avoiding pitfalls and noting potential ambush points. Suddenly, movement ahead caught their attention. A group of thieves, dressed in dark clothing and armed with clubs and daggers, emerged from behind thick underbrush. They had clearly been watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. The warriors froze, assessing the situation. The giant stepped forward, his voice booming through the trees. "We are here to take back what belongs to the innocent. Leave peacefully and no harm will come to you. Stand against us, and you will face the consequences of your actions." The thieves laughed, a harsh and unpleasant sound that echoed through the forest. They were confident, knowing they had previously faced villagers and come away victorious. But the giant and the warriors were different. The giant's enormous size and quiet confidence, combined with the unity and skill of the warriors, created a presence the thieves had not anticipated. They hesitated, unsure of how to proceed against a force so carefully organized and prepared. The first attempt by the thieves was clever but ineffective. One man tried to rush forward and grab the crown, but a quick move by Sana, the tracker, intercepted him. She tripped him with precise timing, causing him to stumble harmlessly into a soft patch of leaves. The giant moved swiftly, placing himself between the man and the crown, his enormous hands lifting the thief gently but firmly, showing strength without cruelty. The other thieves hesitated, unsure whether to attack or retreat. Farid stepped forward, coordinating the warriors to form a protective line around the crown. Each warrior had a specific role. Some observed from higher ground, others positioned themselves to block potential escape routes. The thieves realized that they were no longer facing isolated villagers, but a team united by purpose and courage. They tried to regroup, whispering instructions to one another, but every move they made was anticipated by the giant and the warriors. Despite the tension, the confrontation was not violent in a destructive sense. The giant and the warriors used their strength and skill to neutralize threats without causing lasting harm. They disarmed, blocked, and contained the thieves with precise movements, relying on coordination and clever tactics rather than brute force alone. The thieves, frustrated and unable to break through, began to see that their cunning would not succeed against such preparation. During this time, Layla stayed near the edge of the clearing, observing and coordinating from a safe distance. She guided villagers who were assisting with supplies and first aid, ensuring that everyone involved remained safe and supported. Her role, though not combative, was critical. She kept communication open, relayed information about the thieves' positions, and encouraged the warriors when moments of doubt threatened to shake their focus. Her calm presence inspired the group to maintain patience and discipline. As the sun climbed higher, the thieves became increasingly desperate. One attempted a sudden dash toward the giant, hoping to intimidate him into retreat. The giant reacted swiftly, using his size to block the path while motioning the warriors to encircle the man. He spoke firmly, "No harm will come if you stop your mischief. Choose wisely." The thief froze, realizing that this was not a confrontation he could win. Slowly he stepped back, his companions following suit. The turning point came when the giant approached the leader of the thieves, a man known for his cunning and ruthlessness. The giant did not raise his hands in anger. Instead, he spoke quietly but firmly, explaining that the crown belonged to the bride and that any further attempt to take it would be met with unity and courage. His calm authority, combined with the unwavering presence of the warriors, convinced the leader to surrender. The thieves, seeing that resistance was futile, began to retreat, guided gently by the giant and the warriors toward a safe exit from the forest. By mid-afternoon, the confrontation had ended. The golden crown was safe, untouched, and ready to be returned to the village. The giant stood tall, surveying the scene with quiet pride. The warriors, though tired, were exhilarated. They had faced a challenge that none had expected to succeed, and together they had done so without unnecessary harm. The villagers, who had observed from a distance, erupted in quiet applause and cheers, celebrating the courage and skill that had preserved their treasure. Layla stepped forward, carrying a small cloth to carefully place over the crown for protection. She approached the giant, her eyes shining with gratitude and admiration. "You were incredible," she said, "not only because of your strength but because of your courage, wisdom, and heart." The giant nodded, accepting her praise with humility. "It was not just me," he replied. "It was the courage of all who stood together. Without unity, none of this would have been possible." The warriors gathered around, sharing smiles and quiet congratulations. Farid clapped the giant on the back, saying, "You have reminded us all that true strength lies not only in size but in courage, wisdom, and teamwork." Sana added, "And that bravery can come from the most unexpected places." The thieves, now neutralized, had been guided to leave the forest without harm, showing that justice could be achieved without unnecessary cruelty. By the time the sun began to lower in the sky, painting the forest with golden light, the group returned to the village. The golden crown, gleaming in its rightful place, symbolized not only the return of treasure but the triumph of courage, unity, and clever thinking. Villagers lined the paths, offering cheers, smiles, and gratitude. Children ran alongside the warriors, imagining themselves as heroes in the story that had unfolded before them. The giant, standing tall among the villagers and warriors, felt a sense of satisfaction he had not known in years. He had faced danger alone and emerged victorious, but he also knew that the real strength had come from unity and courage. The villagers, once fearful of his presence, now saw him as a protector and guide. Layla, proud and grateful, prepared for the final steps that would ensure the wedding could proceed safely. That evening, the village square was alive with quiet celebration. Villagers, warriors, and the giant shared stories, laughter, and relief. The golden crown was placed carefully in the center of the square, a symbol of triumph and honor. The giant, who had once been feared and avoided, now stood among friends, respected and admired for his bravery, wisdom, and compassion. In that moment, the village understood an important lesson. True courage was not about strength alone, but about unity, wisdom, and the willingness to face danger for the sake of others. The golden crown had returned, but more importantly, the hearts of the villagers had been strengthened. They had witnessed bravery in action, learned the power of teamwork, and understood that even the most unlikely hero could inspire change. As night fell, the village prepared for the wedding. Lights were strung across the square, and the air was filled with the scent of food, flowers, and celebration. The giant remained quietly at the edge, watching over the village, proud of what had been accomplished. The warriors shared quiet smiles, knowing that together they had achieved something remarkable. Layla, standing near the crown, felt a deep sense of gratitude and excitement. The wedding could now proceed, safe and honored, thanks to courage, unity, and unexpected friendship. The village awoke to a morning filled with sunlight and anticipation. After the long days of danger and preparation, there was a sense of calm and joy that had not been felt in years. Birds chirped merrily, and the air smelled sweet from the flowers that had been carefully arranged throughout the village square. Children ran about, helping carry small bundles of petals, while the elders oversaw the decorations, ensuring that everything was ready for the wedding. The golden crown, recovered safely from the thieves, gleamed in the morning light, a symbol of triumph and courage. The villagers had never felt such excitement and pride. The story of the giant and the warriors who had protected the crown had spread rapidly through the community. Everyone had played a part, from the seasoned warriors who had faced danger, to the young children who had helped with small tasks, to the elders who had shared advice and wisdom. The village had come together like never before, and the air buzzed with happiness and relief. Layla stood in the center of the preparations, her dress simple yet elegant, reflecting her natural grace and confidence. She looked around at the villagers and warriors, feeling gratitude for every person who had helped. Her eyes found the giant who stood quietly at the edge of the square. He had not sought recognition or thanks, but Layla knew that without him, none of this would have been possible. The giant's presence was calm yet powerful, a steady anchor for the entire village. As the ceremony began, villagers gathered in a circle around the square. The giant moved closer, but with careful steps, ensuring he did not dominate the space meant for the wedding. Amir, the groom, approached Layla, his eyes reflecting pride, joy, and deep affection. The moment was serene, yet charged with emotion. This was not just a celebration of love, but also a celebration of courage, unity, and perseverance. The villagers held their breath as the two exchanged vows, the golden crown placed nearby, shining as a symbol of honor restored. During the ceremony, the giant was quietly recognized for his bravery. Farid, the elder warrior, stepped forward, addressing the gathered villagers. "We have seen courage in many forms," he said, his voice carrying across the square. "Some are born with strength, others grow with wisdom, but today we have witnessed a hero who risked everything to protect what is right. The giant once feared has shown us that true bravery comes from the heart, and that appearances can never define a person." The villagers erupted in applause, clapping and cheering. Children ran forward to touch his hand, fascinated by the man they had once been told to fear. Women and men approached him, offering smiles, flowers, and words of thanks. The giant, who had never known such recognition, bowed his head humbly. Though he had acted out of necessity and honor rather than a desire for praise, he could not hide a small, genuine smile that lit up his rugged face. The warriors who had aided him shared quiet nods and smiles, proud of what had been accomplished together. They understood that while the giant had been the catalyst for success, it was their unity and cooperation that had allowed them to overcome the thieves without harm. The ceremony continued with a sense of joy and reverence, celebrating not only the love between Layla and Amir, but also the courage, teamwork, and wisdom that had restored peace to the village. As the afternoon progressed, the wedding feast began. Long tables were set with fresh bread, fruits, sweets, and savory dishes. Villagers, warriors, and the giant gathered together, sharing stories and laughter. Music played, and children danced around the square, their joyful voices mixing with the melodies. The atmosphere was electric with happiness, yet there was a deep respect for the events that had unfolded in the preceding days. The village had witnessed true heroism, and the sense of pride and community was palpable. The giant, though not one for attention, was gently encouraged to join the festivities. At first, he hesitated, uncertain how to participate in a celebration that seemed so foreign after years of isolation. But Layla approached him with a warm smile, offering a hand in friendship. "Today is a day of joy," she said. "It is not only for the wedding but for all who have shown courage and honor. Join us. You belong here now." Slowly, the giant stepped into the circle, and the villagers welcomed him with warmth. Children clung to his large hands, marveling at his strength, while the elders offered respectful bows. The giant's presence, once a symbol of fear, had transformed into one of protection, guidance, and hope. He moved among the villagers carefully, sharing quiet words and smiles, feeling a connection that he had never experienced in the solitude of the forest. As the feast continued, Layla and Amir invited the giant to sit beside them near the golden crown. "You have given so much," Layla said softly. "Without your courage, this day might not have been possible. It is only right that you are honored here with us as a friend and protector of our village." The giant's eyes widened slightly, a mixture of surprise and gratitude reflecting in them. He had acted out of duty and honor, never expecting recognition or celebration. Yet now, surrounded by the warmth and joy of the village, he felt something new, belonging. The rest of the afternoon passed in shared stories and laughter. Villagers recounted tales of the giant's bravery, and the warriors shared their experiences with humor and humility. Even the thieves, now safely guided away from the village, had become part of the story as a reminder of the challenges that had been overcome. Layla and Amir moved through the crowd, ensuring everyone felt included, praised, and celebrated. The sense of unity and togetherness was unlike anything the village had ever known. As evening approached, lanterns were lit, casting a soft glow across the village square. The golden crown sparkled, a constant reminder of the courage and determination that had restored peace. Villagers, warriors, and the giant gathered near it one last time, reflecting on the journey that had brought them together. Children sat quietly, listening to the stories of bravery and clever thinking, inspired by the example of the giant and the warriors. The elders nodded, proud of the new generation witnessing lessons in courage, honor, and unity. Before the night ended, Layla approached the giant once more. "You have changed this village," she said, her voice gentle yet firm. "Not just by protecting what is precious, but by showing us what true bravery and kindness mean. You are no longer just a figure of fear. You are a hero, a friend, and a part of our family." The giant's eyes softened, and he nodded, feeling a warmth he had never known in his years of solitude. In that moment, he understood that recognition, friendship, and acceptance were as powerful as any display of strength. The villagers and warriors began to sing, a melody of celebration, gratitude, and unity. Layla and Amir, now officially married, joined in, dancing and laughing among their friends. The giant, initially hesitant, followed their lead, moving with a careful rhythm but with joy in his heart. The forest around the village seemed to echo their happiness, as if nature itself was celebrating the courage, honor, and unity that had brought them all together. As the night deepened, the villagers finally settled, tired but happy. Children slept peacefully, inspired by the events of the day. Elders reflected on the bravery they had witnessed, grateful for the lessons that would be passed down to future generations. The giant, now accepted and honored, sat quietly at the edge of the square, watching the stars appear one by one. He had come from a life of solitude and fear, but he had found something far more precious: friendship, respect, and a place in a community that would never forget his courage. The golden crown, safe and shining, was placed in its rightful place in the village hall. It symbolized not only heritage and honor but also the triumph of courage, unity, and clever thinking. Every villager, warrior, and even the giant knew that this story would be told for generations. A story of bravery, wisdom, and unexpected friendship. The village had learned that heroes could come in all shapes and sizes, that courage often appears in unexpected forms, and that unity and honor could overcome even the most daunting challenges. As the final lanterns were extinguished and the village grew quiet, the giant remained near the edge of the square, smiling softly to himself. He had faced danger, risked everything, and now found recognition and belonging. Layla and Amir, holding hands and smiling at the gathered villagers, knew that their wedding had become something far greater than they had imagined. It was a celebration of love, courage, unity, and the enduring power of the human heart. The story of the dirty giant, once feared and misunderstood, had transformed into a story of inspiration. He had shown that bravery is not measured by size alone, that strength without wisdom is incomplete, and that true heroes often act with humility and honor. And as the village slept under the stars, dreams were filled with hope, courage, and the promise that even the most unexpected heroes can change the world.